So, welcome to my talk. Were there many who were at my talk last year? Some of you. So not so very many. So I could really have repeated that talk. That was a bummer. It would have been less work for me. My name is Johannes Brodwell. I work as Chief Scientist for ExcelSoft, which is a company that offshores development services, currently only to Sri Lanka, where it's much warmer than here, so that's nice. In this talk, I want to demonstrate how you use test-driven development in a real application, at the same time as I want to demonstrate how you construct a much simpler application. Maybe too simple for real life, but my experience is that it actually works pretty well to think simply in real life. The demo will be in Java. I've started working on similar stuff in .NET, and I'll give some further ideas of how to work with that. So, do unit test your slides? Obviously, I do not. All right, this is the direction. I'll spend a few minutes talking about what I call the bare knuckle philosophy, and then I'll demonstrate how to do bare knuckle web development in Java, and then I'll talk about how I've expanded this approach to actual real projects. So the word bare knuckle, from bare knuckle boxing, you know what that would mean? No gloves, no holds barred, it's sort of high impact and low ceremony. So I want something that's light on the frameworks, so not so much stuff that you carry around with it, but that is high on test-driven development, because that gives me a lot of impact. And I want to explain the philosophy sort of by talking about calculators, which has nothing to do with the rest of the talk. So if you get a good framework, the framework can solve 80% of your job, right? Well, 80, maybe even 90% of your job. Have you ever experienced this though? All right, if you do the math on that, how much work have you got left? So if you've used Hibernate, and then all of a sudden you add something, and then everything goes really slow. Like, all of a sudden you did a n+1, as it's called, and things slow down, and then you have to start digging through the documentation and configuration and try and find out what the hell just happened. Or you get a requirement, you've got this nicely generated code to do a web service, and then you have to insert something into the SOAP header, and you're like, okay, how do I get started with this? I don't even know. Or how do you do anything with Spring that's not just Spring? I think that about half of the articles on any website about Java development is how to do logging with Spring, or how to do class association with Spring, or how to call a method with Spring, or something like that. So obviously there's a lot of things that you need to learn. I've used Spring in an application where there were hundreds of Spring beans. Everything was auto-wired, and it was a component scan, which means that it discovers beans automatically and wires them together automatically. And then all of a sudden, I wanted to create a slightly different context, and all of a sudden it says, I can't find this bean. All right, where do I start? There's thousands of lines, there's probably tens of thousands of lines of XML code. I can't find this bean. All right, where do we start looking? So I want to get away from that. Instead, I want to focus on test driving what I do. And that means that I can start with no more architecture. So just make the simplest system that fulfills my requirement. Leave out all the frameworks and crap framework bits that I don't need yet. And I want to have a feedback cycle that lets me know if I'm on the right path, and if I'm staying on the right path in the future. My dad used to say when I was growing up, you're not allowed to use a calculator when you do math until you don't need it anymore. The point is that if you use a calculator when you do math, you don't know what work, and you don't know how to do the problems yourself. You don't know what the calculator gives you, and you don't know what it's taking away. So don't use any frameworks that you don't understand well enough so that you don't need them. That's the first bit of my talk. That's sort of the introduction to the bare knuckle philosophy. And I've worked with a web-based thing, a service-based thing, database thing for it mostly. And this is a live demo of how to program a web application. So I hope you're not offended by some live coding. Some people might feel that it's hard to understand because you're not that good developers, and then it's okay if you leave. I won't be very upset. It's happened before. All right, so what I want to do is I want to make a phone book application, and it's a web application. So I want to make this test-driven. Where do I start? Write a test, yes. Okay, so what should my test do for a phone book? All right, yeah, he just answered your question. What does it need to do? It needs to add a new contact. How do I know if the contact with that is successfully?
You can find it.
All right, yeah, so we add a contact and we find the contact. Great. And I start by writing a test. Okay, brilliant. So we've got, this would be like, let's say contact web test, because this is a web application, so we start with web, right? So I have made a Maven, I have a Maven POM file in this project, but I have no library. Yeah, that's it. Okay, and then I need to go to some URL. Okay, this URL, I have to figure out how to do this. I'm just going to set it to null for now. So presumably we've got some sort of menu here, right? So we could find something with the text. So what did you say? Add contact? Yeah, okay, add contact. And then, so this is a link, so I can click it. It should be a link. It isn't a link yet because there's no application, of course. And then we say, okay, so what do I need to have on my contact? Name, yes. I'm going to say full name. That's good. And I've learned, I'm doing these haltos together with a friend, and he insisted the only right name to use in test is Darth Vader. I don't know. Okay, and what else? Phone number.
Do you know?
Well, does anybody know Darth Vader's phone number?
Why do you want to call?
Oh, I can't tell you that. All right, I think that's enough for now. We can add more stuff later, but we just need something. And then I'll just keep it simple for now. We just want something to work. So I need a button that's called Add Contact or something like that, and then I click it, and now it should be saved. So now I expect to be on the menu again. So I go to another, so I click another link. So what should I do when I've added in? Find contact. All right, and let's see. So I'm searching for some contact. So search by name then, I guess. Something like name query. And we want it to be a substring. And we want it to be case insensitive. Good. And then I'm submitting the form. So there's some form here and I'm submitting it. And then I'm just going to check, assert that. Oh, wrong, assert that. Oh, I want this. So I'm going to just look at the page source and see that it contains, let's say, Darth Vader and the phone number in parentheses. All right, so does that seem like a reasonable sort of acceptance test for this system? Yeah, like it. Let's run it. Whoa, it fails. Why does it fail? Malfunction URL exception. Oh no, that's probably not a good URL, is it? Oh, so I guess I need to start a web server. There we go. Start the server. Start it at port 0. Does anyone know what port 0 means? Any port, yeah. So pick a port for me. I'm gonna have my code under source main web app. That's where the web application will be, and I will have let's call the phone book. Okay, so that's my web server, and then I start it. And now comes the magic thing. You might want to take notes. So the port that it's actually starting at is get connector to 0.get local port. I'm trying to get the Jetty team to understand that that might not be ideal, but they haven't listened to me so far. Localhost plus local port plus /phone book. And I just remembered I've done this demo before and I forgot to delete my web app. So, there we go. This is Jetty. It's a, oh, I forgot something else as well. To delete something else, I'm just going to delete. This is stuff from the old drive. Please pretend that I didn't do those deletes. All right, so Jetty is a nice little web application server which can run in memory like this. So I don't need any installation, it's just a dependency, it's just a library. It's very nice. And then I get like a huge backlog, log here. So I think whenever you get like a big log like this, it's good to make sure that you're taking care of your logging. So I'm adding a log file here. I didn't care to write this for you, so I'm just turning down Jetty's log level to warning. Let's run it again, let's see what it really says. It's got stack trace here, it says web application not found, source main web app. Oh, that's not so strange, maybe I should just create that again. Source main web app, new folder. Web app, all right, run it again. Now I'm test driving my server configuration. Then it says blah blah blah, can't find element. So it's a bit hard to see here, but let's see if I can blow it up. There we go. So it says no link found with text add contact. So what should I do? Add a web page, yeah. I'm just going to do this as a static page for now. Index of HTML, it's an HTML page. Oh, we need some nice titles, right? H2, what do you want to do today? It's good. And a menu. This is how I make a menu. Href, so let's say that this is contact create.html. And that should be add, what was it? Add contact, add person? Contact. Okay. And does anybody remember the name of the other one? Find contact, all right. I'm putting that on the index page because it's kind of like an index. Okay, that's right. So, unable to locate element with name full name. Right, what happened? Well, right now my tests framework is not giving me as good feedback as I want, so I'm just going to override the find element method. I did this, and provide a bit better debugging support. So this is no such element exception. It's this one, and so throw it again. Throw no such element. Oh. Such no such element exception. There we go. So say can't find whatever I was searching for in whatever the page looks like. So I can actually see what my test complains about. All right, so here it says, oh, 404 not found. And it says, blah, 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 problem accessing phonebook /contact /crate.html. Does this surprise anyone? Just checking. So what do I need to do? Context folder, yeah, or let's say that I want this to be actually the dynamic part of the application. So I want this to be a servlet. And then I have to create a web XML file. I don't care about writing this gunk in the header, but it's really an empty file. So I'm cheating a little bit, not very much. So I have a servlet, and now, is it servlet name or servlet class first? I can never remember. Anyone remember? Name first, contact, servlet. Good, and I don't think anyone does this anymore, except me. Because you're all editing screen configuration files, right? Bare knuckle web. What do I want to call the servlet? Contact servlet. Right. So we have a contact servlet, and we do a servlet mapping. So we say that now I know the servlet name again, and I need some URL. So everything that starts with contact, I wanted to handle that. Which did. Okay. Now, oh no, what does it say? Class not found. Does this surprise anyone? If it does, you haven't understood tester development. All right, so what do I need to do? Create a class. So I make a class. It's a main class, and it's called this stuff, and it's like this. Good, I have a class. What exception do I get now? Can anyone guess? Hmm? It's not a servlet. Thank you. Now it's a servlet. But it's not supporting a get method on this URL. That means I'm actually hitting the servlet, right? Now this test is really, really slow. It takes 2 seconds to run. So I want faster feedback when I'm actually developing my servlet. So I'm going to add a new test that's let's test directly on the servlet. So that would be contact servlet test. And so the first 2 tricks that I've shown you is Webdriver, which lets you click around on the page, and Jetty, which lets you start a web server in the process. Now I'm going to show you Mockito. Has anyone used Mockito? Yes. Yeah, great. Okay, so what's the first thing my servlet needs to do? Yes, I need to name it after what the servlet needs to do. So what does the servlet need to do? Get, yes, it needs to get something. What does it need to get? Contact, well, it needs to get the contact creation form. So should show contact creation form. Good. And then I have my servlet. So I'm just instantiating a servlet. It turns out you don't need to have a framework to instantiate a servlet. Who would have known? All right, I want to call doGet, but it's not visible, so I'm going to just make it as a override like this. Okay, and doGet takes request and response. Now, what do I do with those? I will mock them. So, one. HTTP servlet request. And HTTP servlet response, resp equals mock, HTTP servlet resp. Like this. Okay, and what do I know about this? Well, let's say one thing it needs to do at any rate is that it needs to set this to have to be a HTML page. So let's just do that so we see that things are happening. Oh, did anyone notice this? Down in the corner? This is Infinitest. It runs my test automatically for me. It turned red. And it says it's a null pointer reception. Also null pointer session here because there's something happening up in the superclass, and then it says wanted but not invoked. It wanted this, but it wasn't invoked, so I guess I can just invoke it. Text HTML. Good. So now I know my tests are running and everything is and things are connected. And now I need to know that I'm actually showing some content on this page. So this is a very nice trick for capturing the output of a servlet, or at least a trick. I'm not sure if it's very nice. So when the servlet tries to get the writer, it will instead return a writer that I control, which contains the HTML. Okay, so then I need this HTML to contain some text, right? What should the page contain? Form. Great. Method equals post. I made a mistake earlier and spent a real long time finding it because I said method equals get instead of post. All right, what does the form need to contain? Full name. Input type equals text name equals full name. What else? From number. And what else? Something like that. That was called add contact, was it? Something like that. So that should do it. And of course it fails because I'm not actually returning any of these stuff. So let's implement the servlet. Rest.getWriter, and then how do you like this? Oh. And then I'll just compile, of course. But if I do contains is replaced by append. All right, let me clean it up a little so it's actually a valid HTML. My test didn't force me to do that, and I don't really care because I know it needs to be valid HTML. All right, it's good. Now I'm generating some HTML. This is really the way to generate HTML, isn't it? I said it would be in the frameworks. All right, so what's the next thing? I'm running the web test again, and it fails because post is not supported. Oh, okay. I guess I should support a post method. Okay. So I'll do the same thing with a unit test here, and I want to use request and response mocks and the servlet. So keep that. So, and what does the post need to do? Should add contact. Can I say save contact? Should save contact. All right, so we call servlet dot do post, right, with some request and some response. That's good. And then what do we expect? Well, we have so where do we save things? Need some kind of storage, yeah, contact storage maybe, something like this. All right, so what I really want is that there should be some sort of that's not gonna work. Contact storage. Storage equals, and what do I do when I don't have the contact storage yet? I mock it. All right. So I think I get one sort of mean look from mocking purists because I'm mocking the HTTP code, and then I'm getting one nod because I'm mocking my own code. All right, so we want to verify that the storage has called create contact with maybe Darth Vader. Is Darth his first name? At least in the fourth movie, or the first, depending upon, A New Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi says, it calls him Darth. but I think that that's actually not really correct. Okay, so it's actually not calling this. Not so surprising, because the servlet that leads need to have some reference to it. So, okay, and storage, and let's just assign it to new field. Bum, bum, bum. There, now we have the setter. It's a very quick way to make a setter. Okay, it still doesn't call it, of course. And in order to call that, we need to have to send in some parameters. So full name is, what was full name again? I think Darth only in this test, actually. And then the phone number. Like this? You are awake. Right. Okay, I also want to do one more thing, and that's to verify that the response is sending a redirect. And I think I want to send a redirect to sort of a web app root or something like that. So the web app root, that should be a local variable. It's just called something like this contact, something like that. And the servlet API actually returns this when I call request.get context path. So you obviously need to know your framework a bit if you want to do this well. Okay. Do post. Oh, so much test code. And then this is all the code I need to write to implement it. Full name and request get parameter, phone number, and what now? Well, redirect. Response.send redirect to request.get context. Root context path. There we go. Oh. There. Okay, it's green. You guys, you see it gets green down here, right? Okay, so now it's saved it to the database, right? What's the next thing it needs to do? Find, okay, good. So, test, so should find contact. And in this case, I'm going to need the storage again, so I'll make that into a local variable, and I'm going to need to set the storage, right? So I'm going to do this in a sort of match before public void setup servlet. Okay, so should find contact. It's a GET request. So servlet.doGet. Request response, that's good. And then I need to see what it says, so I need to save the HTML, and I can just as well move this to setup. Okay, so then I need to see something like this, right? But it's this is the copy paste pattern. So we want it to say input name equals name query, and then it has some submit button, which can be called find contact or something like this. Now, of course, this is kind of weird because this looks very much the same as, this test looks very much the same as this, so there needs to be some way to distinguish between them. So I have to say that when the request, the part that's after, so the part that's sort of this star here is called path info. So then return, so if I go to the index page, then it should do this, and this stuff up here. That's on the create page. Okay, so if I go to the index page, I should see this instead. So I guess there needs to be some if test around this. Actually, why don't I extract this? So this writer here, that's a writer, that's good. And then I extract this to show create form, something like that. And this, of course, only needs to do that if request.getPathInfo equals / create.html. And if it doesn't, then show the find page. Find page. Good. And a little trick, show create form, and just inline it. Bang, now we've got something to work with. But it doesn't look right, so I'm going to fix it, get, and then name query, and then remove this, and find here, that's good. Yeah, it's great. Great. Now we actually needed to search for people. So maybe we should say when request.getParameter name query. So what should we search for? Darth. Okay. Then I actually want the name query here to have the value Darth as well, so that it echoes out my search. That's good. And in addition, I want to verify that the storage gets a method called find. Find? Is that enough? Yeah. So now storage is called with find. Find is, so that's the name query, and it should return a list of contact. Domain objects. Now I'm domain driven. All right. Okay, so that's my contacts. Okay, and it's still doesn't call this, so I guess I need to do that down here. So I want to say value equals, so that was something like name query. Good. Oh, name query doesn't exist here, of course. I need this as a parameter. There we go. And let's request that parameter and name query. Good. All right. Wanted but not invoked, so obviously we need to call the contact storage with the find with the name query. Perfect. All right, maybe we wanted to display the name, the people as well. So when we search, okay, no, that's a contact, that's a storage. Ha. When we search for any string matches, any string, then we want to return some sort of list contacts. So who should we return? This is time for some audience participation. Who's returned when we search for Darth? Darth Vader? Anyone else? Oh. Good. Good, my young apprentice. Yes. Something like this. So we need, I think it's misspelled like hell. Full name, phone number. I'm just going to assign these two new fields. Okay. All right, and then I need to check that they're actually printed here. So it needs to contain Darth Vader with the phone number 666, and it also needs to contain Darth something, and this is hopefully mangled. All right, and so it fails. And I'll implement it real quickly. So now I need to wrap this thing in some HTML, and I need to save the people that I searched for. Oops, And I need to save the people that I searched for. There we go. And I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to say, so for each contact, writer dot append, I'm just going to make a div around them. Div and a plus contact dot print. How do you guys like my web framework? Okay, so printing, that's the full name plus phone number. Okay, my test should work. Something is not compiling. Maybe a semicolon here. Okay, so my test agreed. Oh yes, thank you. We probably have that error here as well. Thank you. So this is, maybe I should have done a bit better testing of HTML. All right, will the web test work now? No. It gets, whoa, 500 server error. Oh no. And the reason is that I, of course, don't have set up the storage. I'm going to make a fake storage for now. Fair enough? I would make the database for you, but I don't think we've got time. All right, so creating contacts. So here we're going to return a new list, array list of contacts. We're going to make this into the contacts. We're going to make it into a field, and then we're just going to say contacts. Oops, contacts.add new contact with full name and phone number. Thank you very much. And let's see, the web test is green. This is good. So do you guys believe me? Does it work? So let me do this, a contact web server, which is a main class. Because Jetty is not really only limited to run in my tests. So now I'm starting Jetty here. And it should be started. Localhost. Which port did I choose? This? Okay, and I mounted it as phone book. What do you want to do today? Add a contact. And actually, this is my Twitter. Ta-da! Oh, this is kind of weird. Well, that works. Well, that's kind of weird. So it has a few bugs. All right. So that's a test-driven contact phone book thingy in 20, 30 minutes. You like? Yeah. All right. So in my...
Sorry, the question is, could it be done faster?
Well, obviously it could be done faster if you're generating all the code. I mean, if you're using something like Play Framework, this is like this, but then you don't have the test efforts. I will just go quickly through some things that I think you guys have as questions. These are my slides, which will be available afterwards. It shows the steps that I went through. And then the next thing that I would do in this case would be to refactor, and I wanted to show you this guy, this kind of thing, because instead of, so I don't want the hard-coded HTML, but I don't like all the web template-y stuff either. So in this case, I've created my little framework for web development, where I can read a file from disk, and then I can just replace stuff in the HTML file from the Java code. This is like jQuery for Java approach. Grab hold of an element and stuff things in it. It's an alternative way of doing templating. Like I mentioned, this is possible to do in .NET as well. Here is the same test in .NET, and it's in my slide. I'm not going to talk about it. And you can also reach me on Twitter if you want to talk about it, or you can grab hold of me. So this is the same test, and you can see it's very similar. To start up a web server in .NET, you can use the HTTP self-host configuration, which runs ASP.NET kind of stuff. And this is kind of wonky at the time. I haven't gotten it to work perfectly. I think that's a misspelling. Further direct. I think this is better. Okay. I've used this approach in a few projects. This is an example of using actual Java code to generate the HTML output, but not with just strings. This is like a builder syntax. Use that in a fairly large project. Here's a close-up of how it would look like. The cool thing is that then you can very easily make your own functions that are like, they would be like a taglet, but it's a function. So it's not a taglet, which is good, because taglets aren't so cool. I'll mention that we've got this project that's in the magnitude, I think, of 15 million euros. The whole project is currently at 100,000 lines of code. We deploy it using Jetty. So we packaged a jar file that contains the web server you saw here. So basically, you've seen the web server that's running in the system. This is how it's deployed. And I've used in a bank, I've used a similar approach to do web service clients, where I use server builder syntax to build the SOAP request instead of generating stuff. The thing that's funny is that when you're doing this, you have to write a bit of manual code to map from your domain object to your SOAP. The funny thing is that normally if you have domain objects and generated objects, you have to map between them anyway. And generally this is less code. This is doing HTTP with the worst API ever, HTTP URL connection. The only thing that's good about it is that it comes with Java, so you don't have to have a dependency. And that's what I wanted to say about how this bare-knuckle approach of getting rid of the frameworks and doing things a bit from scratch with strong test support have been used. I've used it for the last 3 years in real life. Now I have some time for questions.
What is the difference between using frameworks and using core services of web container? So there is, from my point of view, you need to know web container, or you need to know Spring framework. It's almost the same.
A very good question. You need to know the serverless container, or you need to know Spring framework or Spring MVC, for example. Why use the serverless container? 2 reasons. The serverless container API is smaller than the Spring API because it does less. And the second thing is that no framework that I've seen perfectly abstracts the serverless API anyway. So you still need to know what's happening underneath. So, and if you don't, that's why you run into all of those weird trouble where you spend a day trying to debug your code. So that's, and I'll say one thing, the servlet API is really not a very good API. It's a really poorly created API. But what that also means, the reason it's poorly created is that it was created 15 years ago and it hasn't been changed, which means it's stable. So it means that they don't upgrade the API, so you have to change your code. I'd rather build on stable crap than unstable, slightly less crap.
Another question, how will you solve typical problems like security, hijack schools, logging, all the
Right, okay, I'll just keep it brief. So the typical, short example, how would you solve security logging? I'll answer that. It's actually pretty easy with servlet API. It's to some extent easier, I think, than with Spring framework. I have a demo here with some code, and I can show you that afterwards if you like. But basically, you can. It's pretty easy to test drive stuff that deals with security as well. And most of the time, I experience the same thing for other things. Now, please come up afterwards, because I see you have more questions, but I would like to see if anyone else has questions as well. Yeah, well, yes, you first.
In which situation you would rather prefer a framework?
That is a very good question. It is my conclusion. I will wait with answering it. And if you're not happy with the answer, stay afterwards. All right. The same?
As the project grows, you end up with a framework of your own.
That happens too, that you end up with something that resembles a framework of your own, and that...
You have your own framework.
Yes. I mean, to some extent, you end up building a bit of your own framework. And that's a danger. So if you build a large framework and if you build it before your application, then don't do that. So one of the most successful frameworks for web development is Rails. And what's interesting with that is that it was not a framework, it was an extract. That is, someone built the application and was able, so David Hannemeyer Hansen built the application and was able to extract the webby things from the application-y things. And then the webby things became Rails. So most of the frameworks we ooze in Java are built before the fact. They're built without the feedback from actual applications, which is why I don't really like them. So I know it's not a sufficient answer, but it will have to do for now. Your questions are...
Do you have any production experience of platform usage, and how it is good with TDD? How does it fit in TDD concepts?
The question, I don't think I understood the question.
First part, do you have production experience of platform usage in production?
Oh, the play framework. No, I like most people, I played with the play framework for 10 minutes, that was great, and then you try to play with it for another hour, and that's really sucky, and then you don't go any further.
Okay, so the second part of the question is cancelled.
Any more questions? Yes?
How do you do transactions in such environment that you don't have this GTA stuff?
Oh, I really wish I had code for this. It's I can tell you as much as that with Java 7, we got a new cool thing, try with resources, which is the same as in .NET using. You can use that cleverly to have a transaction that only has 2 lines of code to create and then commit the transaction that will work in all cases. So your framework allows you not to think about transactions actually only replace 2 lines of code in your program if you write it well. I can show you the code afterwards. So.
So probably the last question is, it looks like you have your own approaches for this typical problem. So how do you solve another problem, hiring developers who are familiar with common frameworks on the market?
Very good question. So how do we deal with, how do we recruit people into these projects? So I really like this question because it's the reason that I'm using these, or the underlying thing that I want to get out of this is that the code should be obvious at all times. That it means when you look at a piece of code that you've written, you might not understand this line of code, but you know that if you navigate to the implementation, that's where it is, which is sort of the opposite approach of if you've got sort of an annotation. If you don't know what an annotation does, you don't know where to look, right? If you're making a call to some method and you don't know what the method does, you know where to look. So which is about learnability. So I think that if you're keeping your application simple, if you're avoiding the magic, then the application will be more learnable without a framework, even to someone who knows that framework. That is, and that is also my experience. It's there was actually, end your question with that. Yes, someone is frantically pointing to their watch now. So this project here, where I used a similar approach to that, there was one of the developers who came into that project after I left it, gave a talk about this about a month ago, and then she talked about how we designed the architecture and described like the job that I had done, but anonymously, and there was a heart on her slide because she felt it was so pleasant to work in an environment where you didn't have to understand how all these frameworks are wired together, where you didn't have the magic code, but instead the code is simple and does what it looks like it's doing, and if you don't know what it's doing, you can go and look at the implementation. So I mentioned this thing with a calculator, and the same thing is with a framework. My dad said, don't use a calculator unless you can do the math without it. And to answer your question, don't use a framework if you couldn't have written it yourself. Большое спасибо. So I might have some time if someone wants to look at more code or ask more questions or code with me. Get in touch with me on Twitter.